Hi, this is Sarah. In this lecture, we will discuss the indications for vitrectomy in retinal diseases. The learning objectives of this course are to understand the purpose of vitrectomy, recognize its main indications, and specifically explore its role in retinal diseases such as diabetic retinopathy. Pars plana vitrectomy is a frequently performed vitreoretinal surgical technique that allows controlled access to the posterior segment of the eye. The name originates from the process of removing the vitreous endectomy, and the insertion of surgical instruments through the pars plana. Kastner introduced an open sky technique for vitreous removal, and Robert Mechemer was responsible for developing the first automated system for vitreous removal with controlled intraocular pressure in 1971 with a pars plana approach, the beginning of what became known as pars plana vitrectomy. In its early years, vitrectomy was primarily performed to restore vision in eyes that would have otherwise gone blind. Clearing opacified vitreous and excising fibrovascular tissue in diabetic retinopathy often led to the recovery of functional vision. But complex retinal detachments, such as those caused by proliferative vitreoretinopathy or severe penetrating trauma, were considered untreatable. However, with technological advancements and the improved safety of the procedure, vitrectomy expanded to new applications, including macular surgery. In pars plana vitrectomy, access to the vitreous cavity is gained through the pars plana, a flat part of the ciliary body located between the ora serrata, which is a junction between the ciliary body and the retina, and the pars plicata, which is the most anterior portion of the ciliary body and produces aqueous humor. Pars plana is located 4 mm from the limbus and is ideal for surgery as it allows entry with minimal ocular trauma. It has no sensory function and does not contribute to fluid production, making it a safe entry point. Initially, vitrectomy was used primarily to clear the vitreous opacities such as blood. However, technological advancement with better vitrectomy systems and advanced instrumentation allows for this procedure to be used in a much greater number of applications. Vitrectomy is primarily performed to manage conditions affecting the retina and vitreous. While the indications for vitrectomy are numerous and encompass a range of conditions beyond the vitreous and retina, the most common indications relate to these structures. The most common indications include rhegmatogenous retinal detachment, macular hull, epiretinal membrane, vitreomacular traction, vitreous hemorrhage, tractional retinal detachment, refractory macular edema, vitreous biopsy, endophthalmitis, dislocated intraocular lens, retained lens material, and intraocular foreign bodies. In diabetic retinopathy, the goals of vitrectomy consist in clearing media opacities, releasing anteroposterior and tangential vitreoretinal tractions, peeling of epiretinal membranes, endolaser photocoagulation, and tamponade of retinal breaks. Moreover, the vitreous removal appears to be effective in improving oxygen exchanges in the retina and in counteracting the formation of fibrovascular membrane thanks to the lack of a scaffold for proliferation. Vitreous hemorrhage is caused by spontaneous bleeding from new vessels in proliferative diabetic retinopathy. It is one of the most common indications for diabetic vitrectomy. In cases where vitreous hemorrhage is mild and the retina has been adequately treated with laser therapy, vitrectomy may not be necessary, as the blood can often reabsorb spontaneously. However, if the fundus is completely obscured, the decision to proceed with vitrectomy depends on ultrasonographic findings. Early vitrectomy is essential when vitreous hemorrhage is accompanied by retinal detachment, especially if the macula is involved. Additionally, vitrectomy should be considered for cases of dense or recurrent vitreous hemorrhage that impair vision and hinder effective disease management. In the past, there has been considerable debate on the timing of performing vitrectomy in patients with vitreous hemorrhage. In 1985, the diabetic retinopathy vitrectomy study showed that early vitrectomy was beneficial, in terms of final visual acuity, as compared to delayed vitrectomy in patients with type 1 diabetes, but poor outcomes were reported for patients with type 2. However, the overall number of eyes with a visual acuity of 10/20 or better was significantly higher in the early vitrectomy group after a 4-year follow-up. It is important to consider that over 30 years ago, vitreoretinal specialists did not have available the latest technological innovations in this field, such as small-gauge instruments, high-performance machines, and intravitreal anti-VEGFs. These new chances of treatment have increased the overall intraoperative and functional outcomes of PAR's plan of vitrectomy in these patients. So, in patients with diabetic vitreous hemorrhage without retinal detachment, close observation is recommended for at least 4 weeks. And, in absence of evidence of vitreous clearing or improvement in visual acuity and symptoms, a vitrectomy should be performed to restore vision. On the other hand, vitrectomy decreases the durability of anti-VEGF agents, therefore, some surgeons are reluctant to perform vitrectomy unless the hemorrhage does not clear after several months. Anti-VEGF therapy can be used before considering surgery to support spontaneous clearance. However, if there is significant neovascularization, these risks accelerating fibrosis and tractional retinal detachment. DRCR-NET protocol compared aflibercept versus prompt vitrectomy with pan-retinal photocoagulation in eyes with vitreous hemorrhage from proliferative diabetic retinopathy. Although initial visual recovery was faster with vitrectomy, the study found no significant difference in visual acuity outcomes in the long term, confirming that both vitrectomy and early anti-VEGF are viable treatment options. Several factors influence the decision to perform early vitrectomy. 1. When there is evidence of retinal detachment on B-scan, especially if the macula is involved, as mentioned earlier. 2. When there is no prior treatment with panretinal laser photocoagulation. 3. In cases of bilateral visual loss because of vitreous hemorrhage or when there is vitreous hemorrhage in an only eye. 4. In cases of chronically recurring hemorrhage. 5. In the presence of anterior segment neovascularization, as it decreases the chances of spontaneous clearance. Another major indication for diabetic vitrectomy in diabetic patients is the tractional retinal detachment, which is a severe complication of proliferative diabetic retinopathy. It is characterized by a rigid, concave-shaped retinal detachment that does not move and has no breaks. In diabetic retinopathy, the detachment of the retina is caused by the gradual contraction of abnormal fibrovascular tissue that pulls the neurosensory retina away from the retinal pigment epithelium. Finally, when the macula is involved, it results in a significant decline in vision. OCT is very useful to determine the potential and the extent of the macula and fovea involvement. Fortunately, diabetic retinal detachments often remain stable for extended periods. Studies with follow-ups of up to 5 years indicate that 60 to 80% of extramacular detachments do not progress to involve the macula, while spontaneous reattachment occurs in approximately 20% of cases. As a result, vitrectomy is generally recommended only when the macula is detached or if there is demonstrated progression of the detachment toward and close to the macula. Laser photocoagulation can be a good strategy for small extrafoveal tractional retinal detachment as it can remain stable for years without the need for vitrectomy. But, attention needs to be paid in performing laser photocoagulation or intravitreal anti-VEGF injections, since that could cause changes in the pre-existing fibrovascular tissue with a rapid worsening of retinal tractions and, as a consequence, retinal detachment. Moreover, with the introduction of smaller gauge vitrectomy systems, there has been an increasing tendency to surgically intervene, even in cases of extramacular tractional retinal detachments, when there is a progression despite adequate PRP treatment. It is important that all patients with extramacular tractional retinal detachment should be advised to promptly notify their ophthalmologist if they experience any reduction in visual acuity or in visual field. Generally, patients with recent detachments caused by small points of traction have the best prognosis. On the contrary, the prognosis is poorest in patients with long-standing atrophic, highly elevated retinas and broad adhesions because the eyes usually do not regain useful visual function, even if the macula can be anatomically reattached successfully. Overall, the results of surgery are good for tractional retinal detachments. In most series, 60 to 70% of eyes had improved vision after surgery and a final visual acuity of 1/40th or better. Conversely, 20 to 35% of patients had worse vision after vitrectomy than before, and up to 20% had no light perception. Frequently, a tractional retinal detachment is associated with a rhegmatogenous component, since the contraction of the fibrovascular proliferation could cause some retinal breaks in the peripheral thin ischemic retina. The result is a combined tractional rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. And in these cases, patients complain of rapid and worsening vision loss, and an early PPV is mandatory. Additionally, as the name suggests, progressive fibrovascular proliferation refers to the continuous formation and expansion of fibrovascular membranes on the retina and vitreous interface. It is one of the leading causes of recurrent or persistent vitreous hemorrhages, vitreoretinal tractions to the macula and disc, recurrent diabetic macular edema, epiretinal membranes, macular holes, and tractional retinal detachment in proliferative diabetic retinopathy. It negatively affects visual recovery following standard therapy for macular edema with intravitreal injections. In patients with progressive fibrovascular proliferation, vitrectomy with epiretinal membrane removal and ILM peeling may be recommended, as pharmacotherapy alone may not be as effective as the combined treatment. Delamination, the surgical technique of carefully dissecting and removing epiretinal fibrovascular membranes in diabetic retinopathy, is a crucial step in diabetic vitrectomy, as it helps relieve traction, prevent further retinal damage, and improve visual outcomes in patients with advanced diabetic eye disease. The leading cause of vision loss in diabetic retinopathy is diabetic macular edema, and the gold standard treatment for macular edema affecting the central area is intravitreal anti-VEGF therapy. For patients with diabetic macular edema and OCT-evident vitreomacular traction or ERM, vitreoretinal surgery with membrane removal is recommended. But even in diffuse macular edema without traction, when laser or anti-VEGF therapy are ineffective, vitrectomy with or without internal limiting membrane peeling may improve oxygen flow and nutrient diffusion. Vitrectomy with ILM peeling may also help resolve hard exudates and edema. Retinal ischemia in patients with proliferative diabetic retinopathy can lead to neovascularization in the anterior segment, resulting in neovascular glaucoma. While panretinal photocoagulation effectively targets the ischemic retina and anti-VEGF therapy helps manage neovascularization, vitrectomy may be necessary in cases of dense vitreous hemorrhage where PRP cannot be performed. Early vitrectomy, especially when combined with comprehensive PRP and anti-VEGF treatment, can help prevent the development of neovascular glaucoma. Apart from complications of diabetic retinopathy, vitrectomy is also performed for rhegmatogenous retinal detachment, which occurs when a prior retinal break or tear allows vitreous fluid to access the subretinal space. Retinal detachment with giant retinal tears and retinal detachments with media opacity such as vitreous hemorrhage are indications for vitrectomy. Removal of the media opacity with vitrectomy allows the needed visualization to help diagnose and treat the retinal breaks in patients. Patients with retinal detachments with posterior breaks also may benefit from a primary vitrectomy because a posterior scleral buckle is difficult to place and may cause macular distortion. Vitrectomy allows the release of the traction, and the break can be treated with endolaser after flattening the retina with an air fluid exchange. This also applies to macular holes that are associated with retinal detachments. Epiretinal membranes can be idiopathic or seen after a host of conditions such as retinal detachment repair, retinal vascular disease, and inflammation. They can cause significant traction on the retina and impair central vision with metamorphopsia due to the forces on the neurosensory macula. Vitrectomy with ILM peeling, is indicated when an epiretinal membrane affects vision or there is significant metamorphopsia. Additionally, macular holes are key indications for vitrectomy. Especially in cases of full-thickness macular holes with visual impairment, progressive or symptomatic macular hole, failure of spontaneous closure after 6 to 12 months, association with vitreomacular traction or epiretinal membrane. Also, vitrectomy may be indicated for vitreomacular traction syndrome when symptoms such as visual acuity decline and metamorphopsia persist, when there are progressive macular changes, or there is a risk of macular hole formation. Moreover, vitrectomy may be indicated in retinal vein occlusion under specific circumstances, primarily when complications arise that threaten vision. Similarly to the diabetic retinopathy, the main indications include non-clearing vitreous hemorrhage, tractional retinal detachment, when traction involves or threatens the macula, epiretinal membrane, macular edema refractory to standard treatment, and anterior segment neovascularization with vitreous hemorrhage. In uveitis, vitrectomy is indicated when medical treatment is insufficient and complications arise that threaten vision or for diagnostic reasons, to obtain vitreous sample to aid in diagnosing suspected infections or cancer. Finally, in children, the most common indications for vitrectomy are retinopathy of prematurity, persistent hyperplastic primary vitreous and retinal detachment occurring in development anomalies. In conclusion, vitrectomy has evolved into a crucial surgical intervention for a wide range of vitreoretinal diseases. From managing diabetic complications like vitreous hemorrhage and tractional retinal detachment to addressing macular conditions such as epiretinal membranes, macular holes, and vitreomacular traction, the procedure plays a vital role in preserving and restoring vision. In this slide, you can find a few references for further reading. Thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed this presentation about the indications of vitrectomy. Please, don't forget to run the self-evaluation tests of the lecture.